A state of emergency is being declared on the Sea of Galilee. Follow along with me in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verse 35. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great storm of wind arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they awoke him and said unto him, "Teacher, do you not care if we perish?" He awoke and rebuked the wind and sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you no faith?" And they were filled with awe, and they said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Now, the date of this live stream is January the 24th, 2026. And currently there is a very large storm moving across the United States, and many of the states are being declared an emergency. So there's a declaration of emergency in the states, in the United States right now, that are affected by this storm. So this is just a little side note, and I'll get into my text in just, but I did a few videos on the whole idea that the entire United States is in a state of emergency and has been in a state of emergency since March the 9th, 1933. And basically the reason for that was the United States went bankrupt, and the state of emergency was declared, and it's never changed. They didn't want to change it, so that enormous powers are granted to the people who are in place, in position, and also it provides for things that maybe you really have no idea are in place. And it explains a lot, but I don't think people would like to listen to this idea and this concept. But anyhow, you can check out my videos on that, about the so-called government shutdowns and so forth. Basically, the government was completely closed, and a skeleton government is in place, but everybody's thinking that it's as you were taught in grade school and high school and so forth. All right, so let me get off of that because I don't think anybody wants to pay attention to it. But let's talk about the state of emergency on the Sea of Galilee. Now, Jesus is crossing the sea with these experienced fishermen, and you notice he's asleep. So that tells you about the calmness of God in the midst of a storm. And it also tells us about the panic that we have in the midst of a storm. And of course, grocery stores now are being very productive in that the sales are up because everybody rushes to the grocery store to buy items, to stock up because a storm is coming. So there's no doubt about it that even though the forecasts are meant for the good of the public, there's no doubt about it, the weather forecasts do and can create panic in the American population. So these fishermen on the boats on the Sea of Galilee into panic because the weather changed drastically. And the meteorological situation of the Sea of Galilee is such that it's surrounded by higher elevation, and you have these collisions of high pressure zones and low pressure zones that can happen almost immediately. So you can be on the shore and look up and see the sun shining and everything is just great and fine and beautiful weather conditions. And then you get into the middle of the lake and all of a sudden there is a violent storm. So it can happen almost instantaneously. If we had a meteorologist here, the meteorologist could explain this much better to you than I can. But the state of emergency needed to be declared, and it was declared. And Jesus is sleeping, and they teacher, don't you care if we perish? They are in such a panic that they begin to have an accusation at the Lord Jesus. In a way, I want to say, how dare you say that to the Son of God? Now, in another way, I would like to say that that was me. And incidentally, that was you. In other words, because of our human nature, we do go into a state of panic. And so they're in a state of panic in this emergency situation. And they have some accusations against Jesus. Where's your love now? Don't you care? We're all going to die. Incidentally, they're very pessimistic too. And they didn't begin to rehearse in their minds the kinds of things they could do to weather a storm and get through the storm, but they went into this panic situation. Now, I don't know if you've ever been around people that have what are called panic attacks. And for the individual, their heart rate goes up, they start to perspire, their blood pressure increases and everything like that. And in their minds, they're beginning to in a sense, die. And so in their minds, they're having this panic attack and they're beginning to feel like they're dying, even though they're not dying. And they want Jesus to do something. Remember, he was asleep, so for him, it's no problem. But for everybody on the boat, yeah, it's a problem, all right. He awoke and rebuked the wind. Now, and he said to the sea, peace, be still. Now, I believe this is in the Greek language a lot like saying be muzzled. Be muzzled. Put a muzzle on a dog. Put a muzzle on the sea. Put a muzzle on the wind. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. So you need to go back and take a look at times in your life when you were in panic or panicky, having severe anxiety, and say, did God get me through that? Of course, the answer is yes. You're here now and you're doing fairly well, I guess. But now, Jesus has a question for them. Remember, they came to Jesus with a question. Don't you care? So now it's Jesus' turn to give them a question. Afraid. What is the essence of fear? Now, you could go into Paul's letter to Timothy where he says about God has not given us a spirit of fear, And is there a demonic element to fear? Sure, there is. Is there a human component to fear? Sure. But why are you so afraid? So he wants them to do some thinking about life and about their emotions. And then he will give them the answer, but it comes in the form of another question. Have you no faith? So you see, faith is the antidote for fear.